Hi, this is Lisa, and you are listening to I Love That Movie. This podcast is for movie lovers. It's not an unbiased opinion, it's not a straightforward review, it's just a couple people talking about a movie that they love. The format is each week I have a guest, and that guest and I discuss a movie that they love, something they're obsessed with, something they connect with. We'll talk about the plot, the director, and the actors, but we'll also talk about the personal connection my guest has with that movie. So if that sounds like something you want to listen to, keep listening. Hey, this is Lisa, and if you want to catch up with me on Twitter, you can find me at ILTM Podcast. I'm also on Instagram. I Love That Movie Podcast. And we have a Patreon. If you want to support us on there, you can. The main show is always free, but if you donate as little as $1 a month, you get an extra bonus episode. Right now we're covering all of WandaVision, so I have guests every week covering that, as well as my weekly roundup of everything I'm watching. And I want to take a moment to thank my top patrons, and they are Chris Balga, Michael Cross, Philip Barker, and Jeff Woodman. Thank you guys so much for keeping the lights on. And if you like what you heard today, please subscribe and rate the show. It does help new listeners find us. And now on to the show. Every week I have a guest, as I said before, and I have a returning guest. I have Nick Ward. Say hi, Nick.
Hello.
Wow, that was interesting. It's just interesting.
Just greeting the listeners.
Well, thank you for doing that. So every year, Nick and I talk about a movie that has something to do with our relationship around our anniversary. Mm-hmm. So we were married on the 12th, and we went on a little trip, and, you know, we've been celebrating. We're actually really excited because we were both vaccinated finally, so we can actually go places. But anyway, we did want to, you know, return to this, what do you call it? Ritual? I don't know. Annual thing that we do. Tradition. That was the word I was looking for. And so, you know, we decided this year to do something a little different. You know, we've picked other movies in the past, like I think we did Dread one time.
That definitely sums up our relationship.
Pretty much. Yeah, I dread our relationship. And then also like Goodfellas and some other fun choices. But this time, we're going to go back to the very first episode we ever recorded at all. And you were my very first guest. And it still happens to be a movie that we love just as much as that first time we recorded and continue to love, but we are going to redo that episode. So what movie are we talking about today?
Dark City. Revisit.
Yes. Reboot. Remix.
Can you add an air horn in there?
But before we do that, because this is all out of order and it's wacky. This recording session is wacky because our dogs are like running around making clanging sounds that we keep having to edit out. So you're spared that, but you do get to enjoy our frantic talking. But anyway, Nick, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit in case people don't know about our beloved union and you as a guest.
Yeah, I've been on quite a few of your episodes over the last
4 years.
4 years, yeah, and yeah, I'm pretty much always here. I'm always
He
listening.
lives here.
Even if I'm not on the episode, I'm always listening.
It's scary.
Yeah, well, I'm in the other room.
Yeah, you're mostly playing video games,
Yeah.
not necessarily listening, but
no. But yeah, I usually jump in whenever Lisa needs a guest, especially like a really cool movie like this. I kind of lean more towards the 90s kind of sci-fi pseudo-action-esque. And I feel like this one kind of really hit a home run with both of us because it's that real dark noir detective vibe that you like, but also real kind of weird sci-fi that I like.
yeah. And it's fun to go back and revisit it because I think, you know, every time I do, I see something different, like we always say about every movie we love, but particularly this one.
several times, and I feel like I picked up more watching it the other night again.
Yeah.
Like something new every watch.
Yeah, I think this movie kind of represents both of us, like you said, as viewers. Like, I think there's just so much in it aesthetically and just a lot of the choices in the plot and the storytelling that I really, really like and connect with.
It's a
And
very
you happen to,
melting
too.
pot of genres.
Yeah, it kind of is. And, like, this movie kind of flew under the radar a little bit. Definitely overshadowed by films like The Matrix that came out the following year. And it has become sort of a cult classic. I think
Yeah.
that people have heard of it, but not everyone's seen it. Especially younger listeners, I don't think have seen this movie for the most part. But if you've seen it, you love it.
Yeah, I feel like if you've seen this movie, you really like, because this isn't a movie you just kind of see just because you've seen. You had to want to see this movie.
Right. Okay, so let's go ahead and read the synopsis really quick, and then we'll kind of jump in. Now, guys, as you always know, this is not spoiler free. So I really recommend going and seeing this first and then coming back. And I think you gotta rent this right now or buy it. We happen to own it on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Also, we're going to mainly be talking about the director's cut. There is a theatrical cut and a director's cut. And I will say, I do think in this case, not always the case, surprisingly, but I think in this case, the director's cut actually does kind of flesh out the story a little bit more.
Yeah, it's almost, I would say it's kind of like watching the director's cut of Blade Runner. You get a lot more keys. They didn't cut out fluff. They cut out like major stuff. Kind of the Donnie Darko director's cut. You get a lot more story that you kind of need.
That's another movie I'd love to cover sometime. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and read the synopsis. So go watch it and then come back. And here is the synopsis.
Email a 4-page essay.
Yeah, please. Okay, so John Murdoch, played by Rufus Sewell, awakens alone in a strange hotel room to find that he is wanted for a series of brutal murders. The problem is that he can't remember whether he committed the murders or not. For one brief moment, he is convinced that he has gone completely mad. Murdoch seeks to unravel the twisted riddle of his identity. As he edges closer to solving the mystery, he stumbles upon a fiendish underworld controlled by a group of ominous beings collectively known as the Strangers.
Ooh.
Ooh. Yeah, it's even got that true crime element.
Yeah.
But a few things I want to say about this. So this was directed by Alex Proyas, and it was on the heels of him directing another movie called The Crow, which, that's a pretty big one. And what were you going to say?
Yeah, it's a very similar vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I
agree.
Maybe a more subdued soundtrack, though.
Yeah. But yeah, he got that and then he got this. And then when you look at the rest of his career, it's like, I don't know, it's like he doesn't have a lot of stuff that I can point out to that I'm really into. Like, there's a couple like bad ones called like Gods of Egypt and things like that.
Dark noir style.
I know.
The Crow and Dark City were really good. They both have a very
Oh,
similar...
you're right. iRobot. I didn't know he directed that.
They have a very similar feel. I enjoyed iRobot. I thought it was good.
I like iRobot. I mean, to be honest, it is not what the novel is like at all.
It's a Will Smith action movie.
Right, but I love Sunny, and I like some of the concepts in it, so... Oh yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. I would talk about iRobot too. I like it.
This is a good one.
I think
liked
it's
it.
good. But it's not as good as this. I think this is his peak, for sure.
This is really, really good.
Surprisingly, I don't know if I've ever seen The Crow all the way through. Is that like embarrassing to admit?
I saw it, last time I saw it, I was still a kid. So I feel like I would get something more out of it seeing it as an adult. I think I was like a kid or like an early teenager.
Yeah, we should watch that sometime.
Yeah, I remember really liking it. Like I said, I think I would like it even more seeing it now.
Well, next, let's talk a little bit about some fun facts. I usually have 2 or 3 fun facts.
Actually, I didn't bring any fun facts just because I don't know a ton about this movie. I just really love it.
That's okay. I got your fun facts right here. The first one that I have is that a number of the pieces of the set, including those used for the rooftop chase scene, were sold to the production of The Matrix at the end of shooting.
I want to talk more about that a little later, or we can
Yeah.
talk about it right now. It's whichever.
Whenever. I think aesthetically it does give you lots of Matrix vibes.
I feel like we were talking about this while we were watching it. They were probably both in pre-production around the same time, but I have to chalk up the look of this movie coming out a year before The Matrix to the way The Matrix looks. Like all the green hues and the filters they use.
Yeah.
I mean, it almost looks like a higher budget Dark City.
It does. There's certain things that happen.
Getting super spoilery, but even the strangers are actually like weird space spider things.
Yeah.
They almost look like the Sentinels in The Matrix.
And the fact that they all share one identity like the agents do.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned...
It's all a ripoff.
What?
That's a big phony.
You're a big phony. And also you mentioned the phone, the use of phones, which, I mean, that could just be a 90s thing, to be honest.
Well, I did notice my astute ear. I feel like it's the exact same soundbite of the phone ringing.
It probably is.
If anyone know, I mean,
if they're using like some of the same sets, I'm sure they have similar sound
only
production.
sound so many different ways.
True.
But if anyone knows, do you know, is that the exact sound file that they use? Because
Yeah,
it sounds
let us know.
exactly like the same phone whenever they leave the Matrix and go back into the real world.
Yeah. Okay, so another fun fact. New Line Cinema forced Alex Proyas to include the opening narration by Kiefer Sutherland, which gives away several plot reveals. Proyas objected to it, saying it was unnecessary, and he subsequently removed it from his director's cut.
I think that's a good idea because the director's cut shows you more throughout the film to where you kind of get to figure it out instead of going into the movie knowing what's happening, which is kind of boring.
I think that there's two different types of viewers, and there's people that enjoy piecing a film together, and there's those that don't like that. And it's kind of like, which Blade Runner cut do you prefer? The one with Harrison Ford narrating at the beginning,
Very similar.
or the one without it? And I prefer the one without it because I like a good mystery.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like how I keep going back to this example just because we're still covering WandaVision on my Patreon podcast, but you know, for that show too, saw a similar divide of people that are like, what the hell's going on by episode 3?
Yeah.
And then people like me, they're like, oh yes, I love it, you know? So it's...
Yeah, it's like, you know, this
different
show's
types of
going to be so many episodes long. They're not going to explain everything in episode 2 or 3. You're going to have to watch all of it. Mm-hmm. They're not stupid. They want you to watch.
Yeah, they're not going to just
the hook.
abandon you.
This is what's going on. You don't need to watch anymore.
The last thing that I have is the filmmakers cite 1940s, 50s film noir, particularly The Maltese Falcon.
One of my favorite movies.
Yep, same. And the sci-fi features Metropolis, which I pointed that out this
Really
time,
good,
reminded
yeah.
me of Metropolis.
Oh, yeah.
The Twilight Zone, I
Yeah.
definitely saw some Twilight Zone hints, and Akira as influences of the film.
Yep.
And I would say that Akira also influenced The Matrix, so I can see
Oh, yeah,
that crossover
very
there
much
too.
so.
Like, even if they didn't intentionally, but you know, like the tuning and stuff is very Akira-esque in
I'm
this movie.
surprised they didn't throw in tuning being like very Scanners-esque.
Oh, you're right. When did Scanners come out?
Scanners was 80s.
Oh,
I think that
okay.
was one of Cronenberg's first movies. Not his first, but I think one of his early movies. We
So-
should do a whole Cronenberg series.
That would be fun. So, yeah, you know, that's another thing is watching it again. We were talking about that, and I keep using the word aesthetic. I don't know, drink every time I say that, but like the look of the film does look very noir, but also kind of looks, we were talking about sort of like French or
Yeah.
European color palette. Reminds me a lot of like, you know, Amelie or
Yeah,
like,
City of Lost Children.
yes, which I would love to cover that too.
It's got like, I know every movie in the 90s and early 2000s had 1,000 filters on top of them. But that's kind of cool because you know when it happened, and if done right, it actually looks good.
Yeah, it adds to the film in this
Yeah.
one, especially since it's all taking place like kind of at night.
I think it's a really cool way to give it the old noir, like black and white look without making it without filming it in black and white.
I agree.
Give it
And
one solid like main color tone throughout the movie.
yeah, and it lets you know too that you're not in this reality, the reality that we're in.
Yeah,
And the
it's
Matrix
not
is much
normal.
the same way, where it's like that greenish,
Yeah,
dark hue to
when they're in the
everything.
Matrix, the fake world, it looks kind of normal, but then when they're in the real world, it's all very green.
Yeah, and so I like the use of that here. I mean, it's not just for looks. It adds to the film, I think. And
Yeah, I think it was very intentional. It wasn't just like, well, this is what it's going to look like. It's like,
like,
no,
oh, this would be neat.
I think it was real. It was supposed to have evoke a certain like sense of retro, kind of like dread almost.
Yeah.
Very somber like city without anything necessarily bad happening in the city.
Yeah, just kind of a bad vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, like the themes with like memory and identity remind me a little bit of like, the movie Memento, which comes out a couple years later,
Yeah.
but also of, The Matrix, but also Ghost in the Shell. There's a character at the beginning of that movie, the original cartoon, that has like a similar thing. And of course, Blade Runner, right? Lots of memories
Yeah.
are a theme in that as well. So that's all that kind of stuff that I like. So, this kind of packages up everything really well.
And if you want to take it like all the way into like modern times, almost Inception-esque
Yeah.
with the implanting of like different memories, like
Ugh, I
them
love that.
trying
You're
to,
so
like,
right.
the strangers are trying to figure something out, so they kind of like change all these people's realities every so often. I think it's once a day, but it's sometimes they leave someone in a reality for a while, but I guess if they don't get what they're looking for, they go in and change their whole life and like completely change stuff up.
The whole thing has like this real Philip K. Dick vibe.
Yeah.
And reality is perception, is reality kind of stuff. And yeah, I really, really like that. Even kind of reminds me of Westworld a little bit, how they keep resetting the characters,
Yeah, and it
sometimes
kinda-
putting them in different situations.
They do the same thing but a little bit different every time.
Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about the cast too, because this has a great cast.
It's a good cast. I don't think I even knew who any of these people were when I first saw it.
Oh,
like,
not
as
at
a
all.
kid.
I love Rufus Sewell as John Murdoch. I love his name because it sounds like a
Yeah,
a
it sounds like
noir
someone
detective
like
name.
Bogart would be. It's like a Bogart name.
Yeah, and then William Hurt as the inspector.
The inspector was good. It's
Yeah.
like one of your favorite characters.
He is, and what's interesting about him is at one point this was going to be written from the perspective of the inspector, because you could totally see that, right? I mean, that's kind of Deckard is sort
Yeah.
of like a detective, and it's from his perspective, but they chose to do it from the perspective of the killer, in air quotes, which I think actually is better. Even though I
think-
love detectives, I like it being from John Murdoch's point of view
Yeah,
instead.
I think it's a cool idea because not only is he trying to solve the mystery, much like Inspector Frank, but he's also trying to like clear his name at the same time. So you really get like double stakes there.
Yeah, and figure out who he is. Like, he doesn't even know his
that's
name for a lot of
triple
it.
threat. He's trying to figure. He doesn't know that either.
Yeah. And then, of course, one of my favorite performances in the movie is Kiefer Sutherland, because he is as Dr. Daniel Schreiber.
Oh, he like does not phone it in. He's like giving it all as this like weird like I don't even know what he has.
I know, he's making choices with this character that are
Yeah.
very weird and could have been super dumb,
But
but
it
instead
works.
it's awesome.
It's almost like what was it? What was that one with we saw recently with Tom Holland and
Oh, with the devil all the time.
the devil? Like
Yeah.
Pattinson's choice to do that voice could have gone totally wrong.
Yeah.
but it worked perfectly.
Yeah.
Kind of like this, that weird, like always short of breath. Kiefer Sutherland did. It just
And he's kind of a little bit disfigured.
yeah.
Which you don't notice a lot until you really get a good look at him later in
Yeah,
the
the way
film.
he's playing, he's acting. He's got like a hunchback. He has a cane, a limp. It's just really interesting. But I feel like it's because his character is the only human that the strangers have let onto their plan.
Yeah,
So
I wonder if
clearly, I
they
don't
like
think they treat him
tortured
very
him.
well.
Yeah, I wondered that this time. I was like, and I never thought about it before, but I'm like, I think that they harmed him, and that's
Well,
why he's like that. But he's kind of like Renfield-ish, like in
jump,
Dracula. Like I don't
yeah,
know, it's like a weird performance.
jumping all the way to the end. I don't know if it's because I don't know. Maybe they kicked his cane out from under his hand, but they have him in that weird like apparatus that's like holding him up
Oh
for him to like walk
yeah,
around in. I don't know why. Maybe they're just being jerks.
that was not in the director's cut. No explanation.
Yeah, get in the weird cage thing.
But yeah, I like it, and also because I enjoy Kiefer Sutherland as an actor, but it's not like he's not the kind of actor that makes a lot of big swings in
I
his
feel like
performances. So it's cool that he did that here.
not to like crap on his career, but I feel like he's really good. But I feel like he's not really anyone's favorite actor,
And
even
he's
though
usually
he's
the same guy.
amazing.
Like he's Jack Bauer, and that's what I think
Yeah,
of
but
him
he's
as.
always good.
True. Yeah. I mean, and when he was younger, he was always just like a good-looking jerk. Like
Yeah,
in Lost Boys and Stand by Me,
yeah.
and or was that it? I can never remember which one he was in.
I think it was Stand by Me.
I think it was Stand by Me. Yeah. But and then you've also got Jennifer Connelly
Yeah,
as Emma Murdoch, and this is is this the same year that Requiem for a Dream came out? I can't remember.
I think Requiem was like
Oh, 2000s. Okay. So she's like 2 years younger here. She kind of looks younger somehow. I don't know. That probably doesn't make sense.
She's
but...
a lot younger, but she almost has more of her labyrinth look.
Yeah,
still.
like still like a little baby faced
Yeah.
in this one, I think. But that could be because in Requiem she's playing like a heroin addict,
Yeah.
and she might have like been thinner for that role. Obviously, I don't think she's not thin, but heroin addicts chic is not good, not something to aspire to. But yeah, she's awesome in this, and watching it this time, I'm like, this is why they put her in that Alita movie.
Yeah, she's like warmer in this movie, but still very kind of standoffish, I want to say. Like whenever she thinks her husband's a killer, she's like, "Are you?"
Yeah,
Like she's not like crying hysterically or something. She's like, "I need to figure this out also."
I think this is another kind of noir trope of
Yeah.
the female lead being kind of, the femme fatale characters that are kind of like, yeah, like almost cold and distant.
They play their part the whole movie, and then they finally like show
Yeah.
their true colors.
Yeah, or like they finally have a break of real emotion, but usually
Yeah.
they're like very guarded and not telling you what's really going on. In this case, I feel like she's emotionally guarded because she doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
She feels like she loves him, but then she's questioning her reality of whether or not he's a killer.
Yeah, because she, whether they're real or not, she has all the good memories of him still.
Yeah. And she reminds me of, Rachel in Blade Runner a lot
Yeah.
too, which again, modeled after sort of a femme fatale character. And then of course you've got all the actors that
The
are
strangers.
the strangers, which, do a good job and have like fun names like
Yeah.
Mr. Hand, Mr. Book, and Mr. Wall.
I feel like we could dive into all of them. Like that could be a whole show, but I feel like each one of their names, there's a lot more than just those, but
Yeah.
they're not just random. I feel like they really means like I feel like Mr. Book is obviously the leader. So he's
Ah.
like the book, the information.
Okay.
And I think Mr. Hand is the one that kind of does all the dirty work. So I
Oh.
wonder if you really break down all their names, you can really, it almost has something to do with their job or what they're trying to accomplish. I'm not sure. That's a theory.
That
but
makes sense though. They're like a collective consciousness, but this is sort of different parts of their
they
personality.
each do something different. Yeah.
And it also sounds kind of mobsterish.
Yeah.
Mr. Hand.
Or also, like when I first saw it, I thought these like alien creatures just didn't know what names were, so they just named all of themselves random things. But the I think last time and especially this time when I watched it, I feel like the names probably mean something that I haven't figured out completely yet. But I think that would be really neat to, if someone knows what they all mean, to like dive into that. That would be really cool.
Yes. Let us now dive into some of our favorite scenes. It's like all of it.
It's one of those things where it's like Lisa's scrolling through like screenshots and
Yeah,
they
to
all
help
look
us.
really cool.
If you hear clicking.
I think one of not the best, but a really cool scene, trying to go in chronological order, is the first time Murdoch realizes he can tune.
Oh yeah.
They're up on that like scaffolding or something by that old sign. And this is also, I believe, I don't think this scene was in the theatrical cut, because this is one where he manages to kind of like disintegrate the boards, and one of them falls down and gets tangled in these ropes. And when they do so, they kind of pull the ropes, and this like like the waving cowboy at Vegas or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a sign like that. The hand comes down and kind of like cuts the top of one of their heads off.
Yes.
And you see the spider creature inside. I don't think that was in the theatrical version, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I didn't remember it. And when we were watching the director's cut, I realized that I've seen the theatrical cut more than I've seen the director's cut.
Yeah, there were some scenes I didn't recognize.
And there were some scenes I didn't remember. But yeah, I know that the director was trying to limit how many times you saw the alien, and even entertained like not seeing it at all. But I think that the studio pushed like, no, we've got to like see it. Yeah. So it comes out, it oozes out of the head, and at this point you're not really sure what's going on still, because the main character John, I mean, it seems like people keep questioning him about who he is and things like that, and so I think he's kind of confused. So you're like, is this really happening, or is it like he's crazy?
Yeah.
Which I love plots like that, where it's like, is their reality really happening, or is it like their perception of it? There's quite a few differences between the theatrical and the director's cut, like the introduction of like the spiral and John's fingerprint is also like not really
that way
explored.
More. Once again, I feel like I noticed more in this one. Like, I think Murdoch looks at his fingerprints 2 or 3 times throughout the film, and I didn't put 2 and 2 together before, but this time I'm like, once again, spoilers, but it's not Earth. It's a weird satellite these aliens have that I guess they've dumped humans on to figure out what the soul is. But the satellite is this city they're in, and it looks like a fingerprint. It's a very spiral-esque street system. Like, there's one scene where you finally see it from above. It's floating in space, and it's like a maze fingerprint type city. I'd never put that together until we saw it the other night.
Yeah, and spirals are a theme in the movie, when the killer leaves spirals on that woman's body. And it seems like it's a metaphor for like they're kind of like trapped in a maze. Yeah, like rats in a maze. Yeah. So that's interesting. Another change. I know we said favorite scenes, but maybe we'll also touch on a couple of differences.
Oh, yeah.
The relationship between Bumstead and Emma is like non-existent in the theatrical cut, but there's several scenes with his wife and with the detective.
I thought that was good because it's almost like they're kind of not playing against each other, but I feel like Bumstead is kind of starting to convince her, but then she's also kind of starting to convince him that Murdoch is innocent.
Yeah, and Murdoch's really messing with Bumstead's reality too.
Yeah.
And so they kind of become part of this club of people that know something else is going on. And plus, I just like that it makes Jennifer Connelly's character more interesting, instead of her just being like the love interest that's being thrown out into the space at the end. She's very like active in the story.
It's
in
also cool that
in the director's cut.
They didn't cut her parts out like they did in the theatrical cut. You know, they left all of her parts in.
There's also a scene where we find out that the sex worker has a daughter, and that she actually witnessed the murder, and she has like a drawing of the strangers. So this is like the first time his wife and the detective are seeing what the strangers look like, because like most people haven't seen them.
That's not Murdoch.
Yeah, and most people haven't seen them, right? So like they only came in and committed this crime because they're trying to do something to John specifically, but this is proof that it's not just John's reality that she drew them. So that's an interesting development. Also, there's a scene where Schreiber is being visited by Mr. Hand in the public bath, and pops up after he talked to Brumstead. But in the theatrical cut, it appears during the conversation between John and Emma. There's also a shot of John in the public bath. He sneaks in the cabin, follows the conversation between Schreiber and Mr. Hand. Again, not in the theatrical version.
Yeah, because I think Murdoch, he like follows Kiefer Sutherland's character for a while before they actually meet.
Yeah. And then also, I think coercing Schreiber into coming with them using tuning
Yeah.
is not done in the theatrical cut. He just comes with them willingly, but in the director's cut, he like made him.
It makes it seem more like he's a pawn and not just working with them.
Yes, you're right. It makes him seem more innocent, which
Yeah.
later, I mean, for sure he wasn't working with them because he helps John
Yeah.
by giving him all those memories. So it makes more sense that he would do that. But anyway, those are some of the differences. To go back to some of the favorite scenes, let's see. I really like the Hellraiser vibes when you finally
Yeah.
see all the strangers.
Their weird little like domain.
Yeah, and that giant head.
From
This
Metropolis.
is the
It's
yes.
like Hellraiser meets Metropolis.
Yeah, and this is kind of like by this point you know that their race is like dying off, and so for whatever reason, the thing that they want most out of humans is our individuality,
And
but they
a soul.
a soul. Yeah,
Because they think that makes you like in theory live forever.
yeah, and the fact that they don't have that, they think is why they're dying and why they don't have their own identities.
Yeah.
So they're trying to figure out, you know, what is a soul, what gives you one. So they force Schreiber to inject everybody with these serums that have all these memories in them that basically give them their identities, and then they just study us. That's it.
They see how you react with different like life events that you
Yeah.
never actually experienced.
Yeah, and somehow that's gonna help them, but it doesn't. Instead, they accidentally trained John Murdoch to beat them. But yeah,
Oops.
that's a good scene that I really like.
I think one of my favorite scenes. Well, I mean, like once again, they're all good, but when you first see, the nightly tuning,
Yes,
I mean that's so cool. Like the city changing. It's like it's a mix of real early CG, so you can kind of tell, but also a lot of real miniatures,
yes,
and just the way they do it all together, it looks really good. And the city is so weird. It doesn't have to look real. It can look fakey. And just the whole city vibe. And also we get to see kind of like what we were talking about earlier, the very kind of like Inception type thing. You see the way they take someone's reality and completely change it. Like it's this couple, probably very poor, blue collar. I think he's complaining about shifts at work, and the tuning happens, so everything stops. They mess with their house, it gets enormous. They inject them, and then like when they wake back up, they're like snobby billionaires.
yeah,
It was really cool to actually see that happen.
right. It's like how much of your personality is your environment too.
Yeah.
Just
And you
makes
see
you
him,
think
like,
about that.
Moving people from different apartments to other places. But I think since Murdoch is further along, he doesn't sleep like everyone else. So this is the first time he sees what's going on.
Yeah, and like in the beginning of the movie, he like wakes up.
He wakes
and,
up during
yes,
a tune.
and we don't know that that's what's happening, but later we realize that's what was happening in
Yeah.
that scene. He just wakes up disoriented, which is also like a fun thing because it's like, what if when you are disoriented, you've been tuned
Yeah.
or whatever. Another scene that I really like is the lounge scene with Jennifer Connelly singing. I remember like the first time I saw that scene and saw her, I was like, oh my god, this is like the most beautiful woman in the world. I love her dress. I love the song. And I like the way she's delivering it because it's like this weird... She's singing really pretty, but it's like very emotionless and like sad. I don't know.
I
At the same
want to
time,
say
I
it's
don't know.
almost like she almost isn't a lounge singer, but that's what they've made her do.
Yeah, like it seems like she doesn't want
It's
to be
not
there
natural.
somehow.
She's able to, but it's not natural to her because maybe she wasn't doing this, who knows, like 3 nights before. And they did a tuning and changed her reality.
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
I like that scene. I also weirdly always love the way it looked when Murdoch goes into that diner
The
and
automat.
yes, and they have like all that food behind all those little glasses.
Yeah.
Was that like a real thing? I mean, there's a weird thing that happens in this movie where like nothing really
Yeah, I think
matches
it
up
is.
with
I
a
think
real
in, like, the 50s
timeline.
and 60s, it's like
The closest thing to a vending machine.
yeah,
Yeah.
But they would restock it, and you'd like put your money in, and it would open. I remember they had this at They used to have these at hospitals in the cafeteria.
Oh, okay.
You could
But
get
it's
food
very
out that way.
like retro, and there's also something like creepy about when he's talking to that one guy that's like, you forgot your wallet, and he puts it in one of the things, but he keeps
doesn't
trying to
really give
look
it to
at him.
him, yeah.
Yeah, and he keeps trying to look at the guy, and the guy's like kind of making sure he can't see him.
Yeah.
Which gave me like 12 Monkey vibes. Also, like I don't know, there was something off about it, and something kind of Terry Gilliam about that scene.
Yeah, it was kind of
to
like
me.
it was kind of like a weird, quirky scene to be in this movie.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of another scene that I really enjoyed. I mean, we've kind of talked about this a little bit already, but I like the way the strangers look because they kind of look like vampire mobsters. I don't know. They look very strange.
It looks
and I
like
love
Dracula 2000.
it. Yeah. Yeah. And again, kind of like Hellraiser a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah. They wear like derbies when they go out during the tuning and everything.
Very effective in disguising their
Oh, yeah.
identities. But yeah, I like that. What else?
I mean, I guess the whole Scanner meets Harry Potter versus Dumbledore meets Dragon Ball Z meets anything where it's like two powerful people like shooting a weird beam at each other and it goes back and forth. That
Yeah,
whole fight at
Lord
the
of
end
the
was
Rings.
really cool. Yeah, Lord of the Rings.
That is really cool. Also, we were talking about this last night. We're like, it's kind of anime-ish, like in some of the
Yeah.
ways that it's told. Like, I could totally see this as being like an anime.
Yeah, and the fact that they kind of just tell you and show you like, oh yeah, and this happened, but they don't explain it.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
kinda
Like,
you
not
don't
necessarily
have to explain everything because
Right.
like part of the movie experience is like figuring
Well,
stuff out.
they're aliens and we don't know how they did it,
Yeah,
so
so
it
they're
would
not
make
gonna
sense
act
that the
like
characters don't know.
Yeah.
I like the scene. Okay, so they keep introducing this concept of this beach, this vacation
Yeah.
destination that everyone wants to like get to, but it's theoretical because
I'm doing air quotes, but everyone's been there.
Yeah.
But they can't remember the directions or how to get there.
and I feel like it's because so like these creatures or these aliens, they don't like the sun, right?
Or water.
Or water. But they know that people do love those things and need those things. So I think they give them the memories of those
They
things
leave that
so
one
that
constant memory. in
yeah,
everyone.
so that they don't disappoint them and they think that this vacation is coming. It's advertised everywhere. It's talked about. They remember it, but they never really get that payoff. But it's kind of a fun concept because doesn't it kind of remind you of like the daily grind of like
Yeah.
we're all kind of looking forward to that vacation
escape,
time and that
yeah.
escape to a beach, and like what if one day you found out like
It's never actually happening.
it's never gonna happen, it's never happened. And
It's the carrot in front of you.
yeah, and so like, there's a scene where we find out that, John Murdoch runs into his uncle in air quotes, and his uncle's showing him all these memories and like trying to convince him, which it feels like an obvious plant from the strangers to
Yeah.
try to get him to
Throw him off the what am I case.
yeah. And I love that he sees pictures of him and he's like, that's me. Like, I don't remember this. And like, has that ever happened to you before? Because it's happened to me where I see like a picture of me from as a kid and I'm like,
don't remember
I
that.
straight up don't remember this. Like, and that's pretty normal actually. Like, our memories are very unreliable, and They've even done studies where they show people a picture that
Oh,
they
you-
Photoshop themselves in,
Yeah.
and people are like, "Oh yeah, I remember that carnival," and they're like, "Well, you didn't go there." So it's like it actually is pretty easy to manipulate people's memories in some ways.
Yeah, if you just
And
make it convincing enough.
yeah, and I thought that was kind of interesting in the story. And again, he's starting to really doubt this location. He opens up a
He
book.
keeps trying to go there.
Yeah, and he has that children's book, like a little diary. They're like,
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, you made this when you went to the beach," but he opens it, it's blank.
There's nothing in there.
But then later, his mind, like his tuning ability, fills it with pictures.
Yeah.
And yeah, they finally get there at the end of the movie, and the deleted scene that you don't see until you watch the director's cut, Schreiber is like, it's not there. You don't want to go there. I've been there. So I think that that's what happened to him is he like figured all this out. He like went there,
Yeah.
realized that there's no escape,
It's
and that's
literally just
probably when the
nothingness. It's
strangers,
just empty
yeah.
space.
And that's probably when the strangers really got him, you know, because
Yeah.
you're like, you can't leave anyway, so be our puppet, essentially.
Yeah.
But they get there, there's like a wall. He and the detective break it
They
down.
break it down, yeah.
And guess what? They're in the middle of nowhere in outer space.
Yeah, it's like
I
like
love that.
it's almost like a space station kind of to look like a city.
Yeah, and like I think the first time I saw this movie and they saw that, I was like, what the
It's like,
hell?
did they
Like I
just
was
go
so
there?
shocked. Yeah, because in the theatrical cut, you get some of the backstory, but like when you finally see it, you're like, whoa, you know.
Yeah. I think the cool thing is like after, like I said, like the whole power beam DBZ type fight, he does manage to defeat Mr. Book. All the strangers are either, I don't remember, are they killed or they just kind of go away?
They're killed because of the introduction of like the sun.
That's right.
Yeah, because he
Yeah, 'cause
like
I think he tilts the station because since he's essentially as powerful as they are, he can make stuff. He can tune fully, so he can move the station around.
introduce more water.
He filled the emptiness with water to where there actually is a beach.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's nowhere else to go, but they can at least go to the beach now.
And he gives them the sun, so it's like that hurts all the like aliens
Yeah, that's
too.
right. I remember that.
I think
now.
that combination is like, well, they're done for. Like
Yeah.
the only thing that kept this working is that I mean, people have to have water, so they had it there, but they kept it like
Yeah.
under control, and now it's everywhere. Yeah, and same with the sun. So, you know, towards the end, he like reunites with his wife, but she doesn't know it's him.
Yeah, they kind of get a
And-
fresh start because I think he goes and meets her where they supposedly originally met.
Right,
So
but it
he's
was
almost-
a fake memory, but he makes it
He's
happen.
trying
Yeah.
to rekindle the scene if he can do it organically.
And like there's some touching parts of the movie where you know he explains to her that like they've never actually met, they didn't actually get married, they didn't have
Yeah.
this whole life
They've
together.
probably never even come in contact with each other.
And she says, "But I love you and you can't fake that." And he's like, "I believe you." So there's like this really sweet connection between the two of them that's kind of like the opposite of Eternal Sunshine.
Yeah.
Where it's like actually they've never met, but somehow they do know that despite whether it's real or not, their feelings for each other are
It's
real.
almost like the feelings and memories are so strong.
Yeah.
Whether they're real or not, it feels real almost to where they make it real.
Yeah, and they're kind of
Very,
like
once again, very Inception.
yeah. It's like whether that's true or not, I do love you kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which kind of reminds me a little bit too of like in Blade Runner like 2049. They talk about like, oh, what if you were programmed to do this? What if you're programmed to love each other? And it's like, okay, but what if people are programmed to love each other by their genetics? Like,
Yeah, what if
who
genetics is
cares?
just like a biological computer?
Yeah, like-
that's programming.
Yeah, it's like, does it really matter if you're
it's-
predestined to love someone else because
Yeah.
your chemistry is there? It really shouldn't even
If
matter.
the feeling's there, then it's real. If you
Yeah.
feel it, then it is real
And
to
so
you.
these characters, even though the situation they're put in is artificial, they're willing to push past that and say, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, fine, but I love you.
They put a very organic spin on this like programming type idea.
Yeah. And I just like, I don't know if this is like a specific scene. Well, I love the scene where all the strangers are trying to get what they want out of Murdoch, but Schreiber pulls a 180 on them, and he injects John with all these memories, and you see Schreiber in all his memories like teaching him, so he's like giving him like a lifetime of understanding of the strangers.
Yeah, so he's essentially like, when you get out of this, you're gonna have to save us.
Yeah,
help you as much as I can, but it's gonna be up to you.
And like he basically inserts him in his life as like a father figure,
a teacher, like somebody on the train or whatever. All these different things, but he kind of turns around and tells him a quick snippet of information. And
so he gives him like a lifetime of experience with him as a mentor, teaching him, and then all of a sudden he's got to like snap into action, and he does. And then the strangers are like, "Uh-oh, oops, that was a bad idea." They were just so desperate not to die.
Well, I think they didn't understand. I mean, they were looking for the soul in all the wrong way, so they didn't necessarily understand like the human experience, so they didn't plan on the doctor turning on them to help Murdoch. They probably literally did not see that coming. It was a total surprise, even though it like seems obvious. It's like, if you beat this guy up and mess with him all the time, he's eventually going to turn against you.
Yeah, like, and once he finds out that someone else has their abilities that he trusts, someone that could save them, you know, like, a Christ-like figure, as is always in these types of stories. He's essentially tuning Jesus, but
the Messiah.
But yeah,
a scanner's Christly.
And he kind of looks like, I don't know, Jim Caviezel's trending because he said something wacky. Not surprised. But I'm like, he kind of looks like Jim Caviezel to me a little bit. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So those are all the scenes that I really like. I just love the vibe of the film. I like that it's really futuristic, but it's got this deeply retro thing going on. And I've always liked sci-fi like that. Like we mentioned City of Lost Children. Somehow I don't think we've ever talked about that movie, but it should obviously be an episode because I used to love that movie so much. Remember, I used to make our friends watch it. And they were like, "We're really tired of this movie."
I don't think you've done any Ron Perlman movies.
Oh no! Did we not do Hellboy?
I don't think anyone's done Hellboy before.
That's depressing.
I feel faint.
I know. I don't feel so good. But yeah, I like that concept in this, and then I also like the idea that like the sun never actually came, but they're always kind of like waiting for it, but it's like always nighttime. Like all that stuff is just cool.
They're like, I remember that. I guess the strangers are kind of hoping they remember it.
Like there's that scene too with the taxi driver where he's like, "Have you ever been to that beach?" And he's like, "Yeah."
Like, "Oh yeah, we went there. Me and my wife went there on our honeymoon a few years ago." He's like, "How do you get there?" "Oh, well, you just take this highway to and then you go, I don't remember."
Yeah.
It's very like Truman Show.
Yeah. Or like Ghost in the Shell, that one driver that like realizes his family and everything doesn't exist and it's all implanted memories. Yeah. That was like, really cool. It is Truman Show-ish, and I do love that movie.
I think another time that happens, they're like, "Oh yeah, you take Avenue H or whatever," and then when he looks at the map, it's like there is no Avenue H. That's like another thing. It's like the one way you get there doesn't exist.
And also, I think we kind of touched on it already, but with the detective, when he's sort of making him question like whether or not this is really happening and if he's being used and if he ever was a detective before today, and he can't remember things either when he questions him, like when was the last time the sun came up.
I think that's he talks to his partner too that has pretty much gone crazy because he has gone through a few like unsuccessful tunings, so he's lost it. He knows that like something is wrong, and I think we get a little bit of a hint that that's happening early on, and I think that's when he starts to like say, "Wait a minute, something else is going on," because like I think it was a superior. I don't even think it was a detective. He's like, "My superior's like gone bonkers and he's saying some weird stuff."
Yeah,
I'm gonna look into it.
But that was kind of like when Deckard's giving the test to somebody and he's kind of starting to question himself, like, well, Rachel later says, "Have you ever given yourself that test?" The what's it called, Alan Turing test?
Turing Test.
Yeah, Turing. Okay.
Speaking of that, we should do Ex Machina sometime.
Ooh, I love that movie. But was there anything we haven't talked about yet that you wanted to touch on?
Probably, but
I know, I'm surprised that this, once again, the episode's kind of short.
I feel like the movie, for as much that goes on, it's not a very long movie.
That's
but
true.
For so much happening, it's a very easy to digest movie. So I think people should watch it. I mean, for being very unique concepts and kind of like over the top, it's real enjoyable. It's not like one of those movies where you're like, this movie's good, so I guess I'm gonna sit through it and see what the big deal is. Like, no, it's good.
Well, we touched on too that like it does remind us a little bit of like Cronenberg films. I think,
Yeah.
especially I saw this movie differently, especially after we've had a couple years of watching like Videodrome and Existence, and
yeah.
I definitely see similarities in the plot and in the storytelling in this one.
I would love to do a Videodrome versus Existence, because my theory is it's the same movie. He just made them 2 decades apart.
I agree. And I think, like those movies, this film's like way of telling the story, it's not like a perfectly linear story. There's a lot of stuff that's just plain bizarre that doesn't get explained. And you're either into movies like that or you're not. And so like,
Yeah, I don't need every single piece explained. I kind of like being able to go home and like come up with a fan theory or something. That's fun.
yeah, and I think too, like sometimes people will say, oh, this movie's like weird for the sake of being weird. And I guess I'm like, what's wrong with that though? Like, why can't you just enjoy how something looks and makes you feel without having to have like all these solid answers of why? Like, it's art. Like,
And
who
yeah, maybe the
cares?
director's not making it for everyone. Maybe
True.
he's like, these are these weird ideas I have. I want to put it down on paper or film. I think it could be cool.
Right. It's definitely not hard sci-fi. You know, they're not
Oh
like
no,
going
like,
into.
it's almost like magic and
Yeah.
stuff like that. It's like weird space spider magic. It's like,
And I guess that's more my speed. Like, some people really want the technical side explained to them, and
Yeah.
if you're into that, this movie will frustrate you to
yeah,
no
because they
end.
don't
It does
explain
not.
how any of it happens. It just happens.
Yeah, and I like that. I'm like, ooh, I don't know how it happened. I
Just
enjoy the
did.
mystery of
Cool.
it. But yeah, it looks great. And I have a theory too that I know I mentioned anime at the beginning a little bit. I feel like if you like anime, it's kind of the same thing where like on some level you like how everything looks and it doesn't have to always make sense to you. The narrative does not have to be 100% linear and all tied up. You're just like, hey, I don't know, they dress like that because it looks awesome and I'm into that.
Yeah, it's kind of like those shows where you really like the characters. There's like 2 or 3 episodes are fluff that are garbage, but you're like, you know what? I'm gonna watch it anyways because it's gonna get good. I know it's gonna get good.
Yeah, so,
I'm here for it through everything.
but if you're into movies that are straightforward, this is probably not the film for you, and that's okay too. You can,
Yeah.
There's plenty of other movies I love that are very straightforward, so yeah. Well, that brings me to our last couple of questions. Number one, why do you think you keep returning to this movie? Like, what about it keeps you coming back?
Well, I feel like if I hadn't just rewatched it, my answer might be different, but I think it's because I noticed like 3 or 4 things I didn't notice before, and I feel like I've seen this movie at least like 6, 7, 8, 9 times, and I still notice like a couple new things.
I have to say that
There's a lot there to digest. You need to watch. It's like a good book. You need to reread it a couple times to get the full story.
you know, I've always loved movies and I've seen a lot of movies even
No.
before I started the podcast. But given the fact that I've been doing this for 4 years now with you and with everyone listening, this movie's different to me now because I have more things to reference when I watch it that actually enhance my love for it. I don't think when we first watched this, I was as into Akira. I don't think that I had seen some of those Cronenberg films that we talked about. Even though I didn't watch those specifically for the podcast, I've just seen them since then. And just looking back on, like, you know, The Maltese Falcon, The Matrix, a lot of movies that I've revisited because of the podcast make this movie experience different for me now than it used to be and enhance it.
Yeah.
And I feel like this movie is one of those films that it's very much a movie lover's movie. If you're not the kind of person that watches all different types of films and gets really into them, you probably might not like this one as much.
Well, it's kind of like we said at the very beginning. It's a very mixed bag of genres already.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird, and it's fun, but I love it. And I can't get tired of the look of the film and the plot and the themes about memories and identity, what makes us human. Love all that stuff. So we'll continue to always love this film. How would you pitch this to someone that hasn't seen it?
I'm trying to think. You know what? I don't remember what I said to this question 4 years ago.
I don't either.
But
I didn't even listen to that episode. I try not to because it was bad. Because it was like 20 minutes and we didn't know what to do.
It was like on your iPhone or whatever. But yeah, so completely forgetting the last 4 years of my life. No.
Skip all that.
Yeah. Not remembering what I said 4 years ago. I would say if someone has never seen it, I'm like, okay, do you want something that's going to take you on a wild ride and show you stuff you've never seen before, but at the same time feel super familiar?
Yeah, that's true because it touches on...
This is going to be the movie for you. It's got stuff that pulls from film from like decades ago, but then it also shows you stuff so far into the future type sci-fi stuff. It's like a wide spectrum of stuff that I feel like anyone could enjoy.
Yeah, I like that answer. I mean, and that's a way to make a story that's really strange relatable, is to pull in imagery and themes from things we already know about. So it does do that effectively. And I don't know, I just think it's like an underrated gem,
Very much so.
When I was younger, people were like, "Oh, I love The Matrix," and I personally, I was like, I like this, and I liked Equilibrium too. I know some people think that movie's like so stupid, but I loved it.
Well, they're dumb.
They're stupid.
Well,
so...
I'm gonna get in trouble online now.
Oh no, but those are the movies that were like not as popular that I really connected with, and so I would say if you like that movie, you might really like this. Well, Nick, thanks for coming back.
Sure. Thanks for allowing me into the recording. Allowing me into the recording studio. I'm usually banished.
You have to like, get out.
I'm not.
No, you're here. The dogs are here, unfortunately.
Yep.
Well, Nick, where can people find you?
You guys can find me on pretty much all the social media platforms: Twitter, Facebook, mainly Instagram. But on all three of those, I'm at Wardco Props of some sort. There might be an underscore on one of those. I don't remember which ones. But yeah, if you just search Wardco Props, it should pop up. And you can see pretty much whatever I'm working on. Finished stuff and in-progress props from various movies, video games, and comic books.
Well, Nick, thanks again, and I hope to have you back soon.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Let's see if we can get some pug ASMR.
Oh, that's a good one.
Peaches, did you have something to say?
You should leave that in.
I should.